Okay, we will go ahead and kick things off. Welcome everyone to the Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series. Can everyone just give me a green check mark if you can hear me okay? Okay, great. Thank you. So just briefly, I'll walk you through the audio. If you can hear me, you have successfully completed the audio setup. If you can't hear me, I'll leave this up for a moment. We will be only broadcasting this through VoIP, and if you make sure that you mute your other line, that will prevent feedback, your speakers. So this is the UI for those of you that are unfamiliar with Collaborate. We have the audio-video panel, the participant list, and then the chat. All of the presentations will take place in the whiteboard portion of the UI. We will do a few voting, polling sessions in this presentation. So most of you responded to my question about my audio, so it seems like most of you are aware the little check mark right underneath the moderator or your participant list. That is how you choose yes or no. We'll also be doing A, B, C, D, various multiple choice polling, and then we will publish the poll to the whiteboard. So if you could just one more time give me a green check mark for yes if you know where the voting is. Great. Okay, looks like most of you do. So if you have questions, we ask that you put a queue. So you first put the questions in the chat, and then when you ask the question, we ask that you enter a queue so that we know it's a question. Misty Cobb will be monitoring the chat and answering questions as they come through. If she can't, we'll have some time at the end for Paige to answer them. You can also detach your chat if you prefer. There's a little icon to the right of the chat, and you can detach the panel, and you can enlarge it. Up to you, just a couple options for you. So upcoming webinars, so obviously today is Paige doing a presentation on creating tests, pools, and surveys, but these are the upcoming webinars for the rest of April. You register at blackboard.com/bits, as I imagine you all did for this presentation. So I will pass it over to Paige, who is the e-learning technology coordinator for Kentucky Community and Technical College System. Paige, are you all set to go?
I'm ready.
Great. I will pass it over to you.
Thanks, Ashley. Appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing okay today. My name is Paige Brooks-Jeffiers, as Ashley mentioned, and I'm with the Kentucky Community and Technical College System. And today I'm going to be talking about creating tests, pools, and surveys. I am the Innovation Strategist for KCTCS for the past 12 years, although the position title has changed over the 12 years. We do have 16 colleges located on 68 campuses across the state. We have about 100,000 students, somewhere roughly around 20,000 sections a semester, and about 4,000 faculty. I do train and support faculty on our learning management system. We have been, in the first 5 years, we were on 6 different course management systems. So we've been through a little bit. I'm also an adjunct instructor, and I have been chosen as an exemplary course winner in 2011 and 2012. Okay, so what we're going to do today. I'm going to take a look, as we mentioned, on creating tests, surveys, and pools. We'll take a look at the pools, uploading, publish your test banks. We'll also look at building tests once we have pools up there. So we'll see about question settings, adding questions, partial credit, negative scoring, finding questions, copying versus linking. That can make a big difference in what happens. We'll take a look at question sets versus random blocks. We'll look at uploading questions, copying your test, importing and exporting your test, and then we'll also take a quick look at surveys. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to, Ashley's already done that for us, change the polling type, and I'm just curious, before we begin, have you ever built a test in Blackboard? And Ashley's got the polling up there for A through D. If you could just select the one that fits you most. Thanks, Sean. And don't forget you can use the polling option there in the participant list. If you could use that, we can get a better gauge on who's done what. Thanks. Okay, so it looks like from what I'm seeing on the poll, and Ashley, if you want to go ahead and publish that, that's fine. Looks like most everyone has used it. We have a few who haven't used it, and looks like we've done most of us have done a combination of our own test and question banks from our publishers. That's great. I was just wanting to get a feel for who's done what. Got a couple more questions for you. Have you ever heard of partial scoring, and do you have a use for it? So go ahead and give me an A if you've heard of it and you use it, B if you've heard of it but you won't use it, and C if you don't know what it is. Okay, well, it looks like we have a large number of us who aren't sure what that is. So we'll definitely take a look at that. Partial scoring allows you, let's say a question was worth, a multiple choice question was worth 2 points. You can choose to give somebody partial credit based on if they didn't have the #1 top answer, but maybe they had a secondary answer that was almost right and you wanted to give them part of those 2 points. That's what partial scoring allows you to do. So we'll definitely take a look at that since there's a number of us who haven't used it before. And one more, actually 2 more, but this one is negative scoring. Have you heard of negative scoring, and do you use it? Same kind of question. Yes, you've heard it and you've used it, you've heard of it but you won't use it, or you don't know what it is. Okay, once again, looks like we have a large number of folks who either know what it is but haven't used it, or they don't know what it is. And so we'll look at this too. Negative scoring allows you to actually take points away from students if they answer if they select a certain answer. One of the biggest use cases I've seen this in is medical courses, and if they do one thing wrong, let's say they tie the tourniquet in the wrong place for a cut, it could have life-threatening consequences. So on a test, you can actually take points away, not just give them 0 points for that question, but actually take points away, which would lower their score. So we'll just take a look at negative scoring, make sure you guys know where that is too, since a lot of us haven't seen that before. And last question, do you use or do you have a use for images in your test questions? This is just yes or no. So it looks like a lot of usage for tests. So we'll make sure that, or images in tests. So we'll make sure that you're familiar with how to get those images in there as well. All right, perfect. Okay, thanks for playing along with me, guys. Now I'm just going to jump over into a live demo, and we'll take a look at building tests and surveys and pools inside of Blackboard. Let me share my screen with you. And if you could just give me a green check mark that you're seeing my screen, you should be seeing a Blackboard course. Okay, it looks like we've got it. Not sure about the echoing. I'm in a room by myself, so shouldn't be echoing. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thanks, Cheryl. Missy, I will try to check on the questions in chat as well, but feel free to stop me if we have one that I need to go ahead and answer before we go on. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to take a look at is we're going to get over to the pools question or pools test and survey areas, and I am using Blackboard 9.1 SP10. So you're seeing SP10, and this is just a blank course. There's nothing else in here, but that'd be the best way for us to see everything with testing. So I'm going to, let's see, go down into the course tools area from the control panel. And I'm going to go down to test surveys and pools. So from this area, I can access all my tests, my surveys, and my pools. Tests are actually test quizzes that you deploy to students. Surveys are surveys that are deployed to students, so they generally don't have a point value along with them. And then pools, these are just groups of questions that you can attach to tests or surveys. So the pools themselves aren't ever deployed to students. That's just the bank of questions that we can either create ourselves, or a lot of our publishers give us those files as well. So the first thing I'm going to go in and do is upload a publisher test bank as a pool. So I'm going to go into my pools area. And I don't have any pools in here at this point. So I can build a pool, or I can import a pool. Now as we go through the session, and as you see when we get over into the test and begin creating questions, we can create those the exact same way over here in the pool area if we want to build our own pools. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead on this one and import a pool. And it's going to ask me to go out and find my file. I can have that on my own computer, or I can have it in my content collection if you have the content collection as part of your school license. We do have the content collection, but I don't have mine uploaded there, so I'm going to go ahead and just browse my computer and go find it. And it's brought me to my course. I teach CIT 157, so in my instructor resources, I've got the zip file that has come with the publisher. Most publishers will put a BB somewhere in that zip file for you to identify it. So I'm just going to select this and submit this. I'm just going to click submit, and it's going to expand this, unzip it, and show me my individual pools as soon as it gets finished. So this makes it very easy for you to go in and use those publisher tools that they send with you, or that you can get with most books. So once it tells me I'm done, I'm going to click OK. And as you can see here, it has unzipped those pools and dropped them right into Blackboard so I can then use them. It's given me 24 pools. And if I click the drop-down list on them, I can go in and edit those. I can export them to my back to my local computer as an individual pool. I can send them to the content collection if I need to share them with somebody. I can also copy them or delete them. Now, just FYI, you will not have the delete option if you've already created a test based off of this pool. And Lauren, instructors can receive that either from a disk if they get that, or if the publisher has a download site. Sometimes they're just putting them up on a download site now at this point. Definitely check with your publisher though. Most of them do have Blackboard test banks with most books. Okay, so importing the pool, not that bad if we've got that file. So we can also build our own pool. But what I'm going to do at this point, now that we've got our pools, is I'm going to jump over to the test area and see how we can use these tools, or these pools, to incorporate questions into our test. So from my breadcrumb up here, I'm just going to go back to my test surveys and pools link so that I can jump down into my tasks. Actually, in mine, Ashley, I have two chapters. Each of them are in there twice. That came from the publisher that way. Okay, so if I already had a test that I had either built from another course or I had gotten from another instructor, I could import that test here just like I imported the pool. Okay, but the way that Blackboard works, if you create something as a pool, you need to import it as a pool. If you create something as a test, you need to import it as a test. Okay, so if you import something to one area and it doesn't work, try importing it to the other. It may have been saved the other way. I've seen that a lot where it may be called a test, but it's actually a pool, and it doesn't go into the test area, but it will go into the pool area. So give that a try if you're having trouble with it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and build a test. And when I do this, the first thing that it wants is it wants my name, and I'll just call this Quiz 1. Oh, great, Teresa. And then I can put any description in about the test that I want. And then if you have instructions as well, there's a spot for those as well. I have seen with students, it makes it much a little less stressful on them if you let them know kind of what the test is going to be over, like what chapters it's going to be over, what types of questions, how many questions, how long they have on the test. I've seen that that can calm them down a lot when they're taking these online tests. So you may want to put some of that information in here as well. And then once you submit this, this is going to create your test canvas so that you can begin adding the questions to this test. Okay, so here's your canvas. Now, one thing that I've seen instructors have a hard time finding once they've gotten to this point is if they need to edit those directions or descriptions or instructions. How can they do that? So once you get into this canvas, you can click the drop-down list for the quiz itself and go into Edit. And this will get you back to that description and the instruction area. Once you've deployed this in a content area, you can get back to the description area, but not the instruction area. So you can still get back to that from the testing area. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. I'm not going to make any changes. Just wanted you to know that you can get back to that here from the quiz area test canvas. Now, one more thing before we actually start putting our questions in, I'm going to take a look over here at question settings over here on the far right hand side. So this gives me some defaults that I can use. So the first one is feedback. Blackboard by default gives me overall feedback for each question. But what this is asking is, do you want to provide individual feedback for each answer? If you do, you can turn this option on and it will give you a feedback area for every answer option that you include. That way you can have specific feedback based on each answer. Okay, and for those of you who said that you need to include images in your tests, to do that, you can come over and you can turn on the images, files, and web links. So you have an option to add your images, files, and links to a question. And then if students need that option as well for their answers, you can turn that on as well. The feedback up here, Vicki, this is for students. So if you want to provide individual feedback for each individual answer for students, so if they select A, they get this feedback. If they select B, they get that feedback. That's what you can do, and that's for the students taking the test. You're welcome. All right. You also have the option to add your question metadata, so you can add your categories, topics, levels of difficulty, keywords, and instructor notes to questions. If you know you're not going to do that, and you don't want to see the box for it, you can always uncheck that. Okay? I'll leave it on so that we can see that, but once you've seen it, if you don't use it, you can turn those off, and that's true for any of these. Okay, so for the scoring, it's got your default points. Blackboard sets it at 10 by default. If that's not yours, maybe yours are 2 points. You can always set that to 2, so that now every question you create in this test is going to be worth 2 points. But you can always change that later as well. So if you have one question that's 5, you can go in and change that 1 to 5, but everything starts out as 2. You have the option to use the currently assigned points or to use the default points when adding questions. If you're getting pools from the publishers, most of them have 0 points on them. But if you've had a test and you turned it into a pool, it may have point values that come with it. But you can always change those. Right, here's those 2 other options that we were talking about. Specify partial credit options for answers. And then here's the negative points. So I'm going to go ahead and turn those on. You have to have partial credit on if you want the option for negative points. And then the third option it gives to you is you can assign questions as extra credit, which means that if the student gets the question right, they'll get the points, but if they get it wrong, it doesn't count against them. They don't lose those points. And then finally, in your options, you've got some display options or settings. Specify a random order of answers, specify the horizontal or vertical display of answers, and specify the numbering options, sorry about that, for answers. So remember, these just give you the options. It doesn't turn anything on by default, but it gives you the option to be able to change those. So we'll see that when we get into a question as well. Okay, so those are all of the options that we can set up in the test questions settings before we start on a test to give us all the options that we need. So now that we've set all of those, I'm going to go ahead and submit. And here we're back to our test canvas where we can go ahead and start putting in questions. Okay, so there's several ways to put in questions. We can create questions, and Blackboard gives us several types of questions that we can create. We can also reuse questions, so we can create a question set, which we'll discuss, or a random block, which we'll also discuss, or then we can simply just find questions to add. Now the upload questions, this is another option to be able to upload questions directly to a test. But these questions are, when you upload them, it's a text file. It's not a zip file. So we'll look at that as well. So let me go ahead and come over and we'll create a question. And I'll create a multiple choice question, one of the most common question types. Now Blackboard does have a space for a question title. Those of you who are used to WebCT, question title was in WebCT. Blackboard itself didn't have question titles to begin with, so that's not a required field. You do not have to put that in, but for those of you who like to keep things organized with the titles, you can use those. What you have to put in, noticed here by the asterisk, is your text. So of course you have to have some question text. All right. So in honor of NCAA championship going on tonight and the women's tomorrow, and I am from Kentucky, and both U of L men and women are in the Final Four, or the final games, so that's what I'm basing my questions off of. So I hope you guys can bear with me on that. Oh, let's see. Okay, and if I was listening well last night during the games, I think I have the answer to this. But if you guys know the other answer, the actual answer, you can let me know. But as we move on down, right under the question, notice here's the spot to be able to add my file. So if I need to add a file to this, if students needed to, maybe I had an Excel sheet that they needed to look at to be able to answer questions, or there was I had a text file that they needed to read, I could link this here. I can also put my image here, and then with the drop-down list, with the action drop-down list, I can either create a link to it or I can display an image within that page. I can also put a web link and the link name. Now, in addition, with the new editor, I can come up and I can add images in my editor as well. Okay, so you can add your mashups if you needed to put a YouTube video in or a Flickr video or something like that. You could do that as well from the question title now with the editor fully displayed in here. Okay, now I'm going to come down to my options, and I get a numbering option. Okay, so if you want to put numbering next to those answers, you can. I generally just leave it at none, because that's the default, makes it easier on me. Answer orientation is vertical. You can change that to horizontal. You got tests by default are horizontal, surveys by default tests by default are vertical, surveys by default are horizontal. Okay, and then here's where you get the allow partial credit. Okay. So if we were to check this, allow partial credit, actually I do not use Respondus, but the last time I looked at it, it had all the options in there. So my initial guess would be yes, but we'd have to double check that because I don't have Respondus to look at. But usually they're pretty good about having all the options possible in there. Okay, so once I have allowed partial credit, I can also allow negative scores for incorrect answers. And then I can also set to show all my answers in random order. I like this. Now you wouldn't want to use this option if you had an all of the above or one of those answers, because the all of the above might be at the top. But when you just have 4 answers set up, that way every student gets those answers in a different order. So A might be the answer for me when I'm taking the test, but B would be the answer for someone else, because the answers are in random order as well. Okay, and when I do my random order answers, I always put my correct answer in A because it's going to mix them up, and Blackboard by default has this option already set, so that makes it pretty easy. I don't have to go in and change those options. So I'm going to put the correct answer of 5, because now that U of L has gone, there was 4 before us, so I believe that makes us the 5th teams that have gone, the 5th college that have gone, had both teams in it. So I'm going to put that as the right answer. Hope that it's right. Let's see, and then we'll just put in some other random numbers. Now notice under this answer 2, because answer 1, that's the correct answer. So under answer 2, I have this option of partial credit. So if I wanted to give them a certain percentage of this, I could do that. I can also do a negative percentage. So, you know, if I put in minus 25 for a negative indicator, they would, if they got this wrong, they would lose 25% of the points. So they wouldn't just get a 0, they would get minus 0.25 on it. Okay? Go ahead and take that out on that one. But that's what that is. And if you wanted to give them partial credit, I could give them, you know, you could give them 75% of the 2 points if you chose to. Okay, so the difference between the partial credit and the negative indicator is putting that actual negative sign on it to make it take points away from them in addition to the 0 that they didn't get from this question. Jean, I'll let Misty take that one. I'm not sure if it came with SP10 or earlier. Yeah, I was thinking we had it in 8 as well, Misty. So definitely check yours, Jean, if you've got SP9. But it is 9-1. Okay, great. Looks like we've got a lot of verification on that as well. Okay, and then we've got our feedback area. Since I didn't select to put feedback for every answer, I've just got the general feedback at the bottom. So this is the correct response feedback, so any correct response you want to put in there. You can also include your files and links there. And then you've got an incorrect response as well. We'll say that we were doing 1 through 3. So this is when, especially on the incorrect answer, where specific feedback could be good for each question, each answer, because you can tell them specifically where to look it up or where to find that. But from what I've seen, the majority, anyways, just use the overall feedback. Right, and then as you come on down for each question, then here's your categories and keywords, because I left that turned on so that we could see those. So you can add any categories, topics, levels of difficulties, or keywords that you want. Just click Add and add the tag. Okay, so you can add those tags. You can add topics, levels of difficulty, keywords if you want. Okay, and then you also have a place for instructor notes. If you wanted to put anything there to help you remind something about that question, then you have your instructor notes as well. Okay. So once you've gone through all of that, then you submit your question. Oh, it's wanting my, because I took that out of there. I have to put something back in there. Okay, so then it has given me that one question. So I now have my one multiple choice question, and it shows me my feedback and all of that. So I could continue to create questions as I go through here. Okay, so we'll do a true-false one real quick, and then we'll move on. Oh, I did true false. Sure, Dorothy. I can show you a hotspot. So go and put my question. This one's a true false. So I don't have all those other options like partial credit, negative scoring. I don't have those options on true false questions. Okay? But I will set this as true. UConn has had both men and women in the same year win. So I'll leave that as true. There's my feedback area for correct and incorrect, my categories and keywords, and my instructor notes. So everything else is just the same. So this is when you are creating those individual questions as you go through. Okay, you did have a quick question about hotspot. And hotspot allows you to select an image and then select what area they have to click on that image to get that correct. So for example, if I go in and do a hotspot, and I'll just put, I don't know what picture I'm going to put up there right now, so I have to click on something. Okay, and then it wants you to upload the image. Now you're not going to upload the image here in the editor or in this file area where we've been uploading the image before. Since this is an actual hotspot question, you have to upload the image in this step 2. Okay, so I'll go in and I will browse my computer. Let's see if I can get some kind of picture somewhere. There you go. We'll just put a picture of Caden in there. It's my son and his birthday. And then I'll go next. Oh, and that picture is really, really big. That one was way too big. Let me go in and get one that's not quite as big there. See if I have one that has the sky in it. There we go. There's a small one. So then I'm just going to drag over an area where they can click. You can see that white line there. So now they can click anywhere in that area. It doesn't get all of the sky, but you would probably have something a little bit more specific that you wanted them to click on. So now if they click anywhere in here, Blackboard's going to count it correct for them. Okay. So does that help? Hopefully that helps for you on the hotspot question. You still have your feedback, your incorrect response, all the other options there for you. Okay, so we did 3 question types just on creating the questions. Now on any of those other question types, over on Blackboard On Demand Center, I'll put that in the chat area, you can go to Assessing Learners, and over there it has, if you scroll down towards the bottom, Test Surveys and Pools, it has tutorials on all the different question types. So they're all listed over there if you needed a specific one. Okay? So all those are over there. Sure, no problem, Dorothy. All right, now let's get into reusing some of our questions. So if you just want to find questions, I just want to pull questions from those pools that I created. I just want to pull them right over into this test. I'm going to go into Find Questions. We'll come back to our question sets and random blocks. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to pull up all of my pools. Now, if you kind of look at these, you'll see that every one of them is duplicated. That's because my publisher with my book sent me 2 copies of the same test. But if I go in, I can start narrowing down what I'm looking at by clicking the pools. Now, I don't have any tests in here yet, so it's only using my pools right now. And it's using all pools. Well, I don't want it to use all pools. I just want it to use a couple of chapters. So I'm going to go and I'm going to check Chapter 1. So that's going to take off the all pools, because I didn't want all of them. And then I'll come down and check Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. So as you can see, it was jumping here, and now instead of everything, I only have 57 items total. It's showing me 25 on this page, where I've got a total of 57 of them. So that gets it down to something more manageable that I can use and look through. Okay. Now, if I had tests that I wanted to look at, I could use those as well. Question types, I can go in and just pull out the question types. All of these are multiple choice questions, so it won't help me to to narrow those down, because they're all multiple choice. But if you just wanted to bring in, or find the true, false, or the essay questions that your publisher sent you. You can come in and just do those as well. And then here, if you had categories, topics, and you were asking what good would the topics do you, we can search by those categories, topics, levels of difficulty, and keywords as well. Okay? So this is where all of that would be helpful. All right, now since we're selecting questions or finding questions, this means that we have to pick and choose the questions that we want to use. So I'm going to pick a couple of these questions. And so I selected a few of them. Now notice as I select them, down here on the bottom it tells me how many I've selected. And I can also use this box up here to show my list. That way I see all the questions that I've selected. And then if I find that I have picked and I didn't want one of them, you can always take those off by clicking the X right there. Now you'll see I've gone down to 4 questions because I deleted one. Okay. Minimize that again if I need to pick another question. Okay, so I've got some questions picked. I've now picked 6. Now, generally I'm just going to submit this, but before I submit, I want to show you guys something up here at the top. I have the option to copy my selected questions or link to the original questions. If you do the link and then you go and make a change to one of these questions you deployed, it is also changing it in the test where you used it. So if you link to a question, that's going to give you the opportunity or allow you to make changes to it, and then it also change and regrade tests that you've used that question in. Okay? If you don't want that to happen, you want these to be separated, like a whole different version of them, then you can use copy. If you use copy, then anything you edit in this test on these questions, you're just editing that copy, not the original. So the original will not change. Okay? So if you link to them and you change the original or the one in the test, they're both the same question, it's going to change for everyone everywhere. If you copy them, then it will only change that version. Okay? All right, so now that I've got those 6 questions, I'll go ahead and submit. We've got them copied. And now they're over here. And there's my questions. Okay, so I've got all those questions. This is an HTML class, so you're going to see some coding in those questions. Okay? So this just brings those questions over for everyone, so everyone has the same questions. That's what's different when you get to your question sets and your random blocks. Now your question sets, let's take a look at those. Let's do random block first. That might make it more understandable. So
hey, Paige,
I'm going to do a random block.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Bailey. Go ahead, Missy.
Robin had a question about linking, and I thought you might answer that before proceeding.
Okay. Let me go take a look at it. Okay, if you do the link, then later delete a question from the pool, does it also delete the question from the test? Yes. It will delete that from the test and then regrade. It'll delete, it does that delete and regrade. So that's a good question and something definitely to know. Okay, good. Thanks, Misty. Okay. So let's see, random blocks. Random blocks, this allows you to pick questions, pick a whole group of questions, but then say, I only want students to randomly get X number of questions. Okay? So right now it tells me, you know, what to do to get my questions. So I used question chapter 1, 2, and 3, so I'll use chapter 4 this time so we don't get any duplicates in there. So I've selected chapter 4. Now I'm still not seeing any questions here. I still need to scroll down and tell it what type of question I want to use. These are all multiple choice, so I'll put multiple choice in there. Okay, so when you're doing random blocks, you have to pick the pools that you want to use and the question types, and then it'll bring up those types for you. Okay. So I don't get to pick which ones. It's just going to use all of these that I've selected. So out of these 21, it's going to use all of them. So I'm going to say submit. And then over here in Blackboard, what it has done, let me scroll down to it. Here's my random block. So there's the 21 possible questions, and now I get to say how many students are going to get. And so I'll say that they're going to get 5. So Blackboard will randomly give them 5 questions out of this 25, or excuse me, 21. But you notice I didn't get to pick those 21 questions because it was with what I had narrowed down, which was multiple choice in Unit 4 or Chapter 4. It just selected all of those. I didn't get to pick and choose. Those of you who want to pick and choose the questions that it's going to randomly pull questions from, that's where question sets comes in, and that's what you're going to want to use. So if I go back up to question sets, now notice I have a checkbox. I get to pick what I want. So let me go into my pools. This time we'll choose Chapter 5. And just the matching questions. Chapter 5. Oh, multiple choice. Multiple choice, not matching. I don't have any matching. There they are. Okay. So now I've got these 27 items, but now I can select all of them if I want, or I can just go and pick the few that I want to use. Okay, so instead of the difference is the random block, I didn't get to pick anything. Once I selected the chapter and the types of questions that I was going to use, it picked everything for me. But now with the select questions, I get to say, okay, I want these types of questions from these chapters, and then I also get to pick those. So I've now picked 10 questions, so I'm going to submit those. But like the random block, I now get to tell Blackboard how many of those to display. Okay, so I'm going to display 3. So it will randomly pick 3 out of this set of 10 for every student. Every student will get 3, but it'll be based out of this 10 and not the entire random block possibility like we had up here at the top. Okay? Now, something to note with both your question sets and your random blocks. They are linked. Notice your little link icon right here. Both are linked. Okay, so if you make any changes here or on the original, it's going to change it in both places. Now, you can always see what questions are in your sets. If I click the drop-down list, you can add questions, you can remove questions, and same in the random block. Okay, so you can preview questions that select your criteria. To see the whole question, click on the little icon to the left, and it'll show you the whole question along with the correct answer. Okay. Once again, the random block, you pick like a category, like your unit, and the question types that you want it to filter in, and it brings you all those questions. Then you just tell it how many questions you want. But when you're doing the question set, you get more control over what questions are possible that the students would get. It still gives them to them randomly, but it's based out of the set that you chose, not based out of the whole group of them like it's in the random blocks. In random block, you don't get to choose the individual questions that's using. Okay. So we now have a pretty good test here. If we go up to the top, It lets us know that we've got total 17 questions, totals of 34 points, so it lets us know everything. And so this test has been created now. Now, if you wanted to upload questions, I'm running a little bit short on time, so I'm not going to go into this, but I do want to show you. These are questions like that you've typed up in Word. And it's not, Blackboard doesn't have a direct way to get there, but BYU has created a test generator which allows you to do a little bit of editing to your Word document, paste it in here, and then you can save it as a text file. And this text file will go into this upload questions to get your questions there. So let me go ahead and give you guys this in chat. So if you need it, if you want to get to that generator, and it's got your sample Word document and a step-by-step on how to use it, so that's there. Okay, so we've got our test created. So if I go back out, just click on OK there. My test is created here. Now I haven't deployed that. There's a whole lot with deploying. There's a lot of options with deploying. So I haven't deployed that yet, but my test is here. I can go back in and edit that test. This is when I can export it to my own computer, to a content collection, and that would allow me to share it with someone else. Now if you go to make a copy of it, it just makes a copy inside this test, or this course itself. If I click copy on it, there's no other options for it. It just makes a copy of that same test right inside this course. All right. And then if you were to export that test, then in another shell, or if you were passing that on to another instructor, they could come in and import that there. Okay. Now, surveys, just real quick on surveys, because they work practically the exact same way. When you go in to create a survey, you build the survey just like we built the test. You can include the description and instructions if you want. And then you have the same types of questions. Although they do have the Likert scale, which a lot of people will use, the true, false, the either, or. So you may use different types in there, but they're all in there. Okay. And see if I can get out real quick to one of mine that has a survey in it. I think I had a survey in this one. It's where you go to view surveys is the gradebook. So even though there's no points on the survey themselves, the results still show up. Let's see, I think I've got one back here. Yep, so here's a survey. So I went in and added points. Once it said that they had completed it, I was giving them bonus points for it. So you can add points to it. But to see the results, you're going to click the drop-down list for the column itself and go in to the drop-down list here and to the attempt statistics. And then once that rolls over, there we go. So there's my questions, and here's my results. Okay, so I can get that from my results of the survey from the Grade Center. Okay, so there is creating test surveys and pools within Blackboard. And I probably need to jump back over now and see if there's any questions that I missed. Let's see, hang on guys, I need to pull this over here so I can read it there. Oh, okay. Okay, so Misty, did I miss anyone specifically? Okay. Looks like Misty's grabbing everything. Misty, let me know if I missed any. On deploying the test, I'll just go over here to this. It can be deployed in any content area. I'm just going to syllabus because that's the one I have created real quick. And under assessments, I'm going to go into test. And here's the quiz and then the copy that I created. So I'm going to select that. If I didn't have a test created, I could create one from here. I'm going to submit that then. And then I come in and here's my description. So this is where I could get back to my description again, but the instructions aren't here. We have to use the test canvas for that. And then do you want the test to open in a new window? Do you want it available? Do you want to add a new announcement for it? You have the option to give them unlimited or a multiple number of attempts. So you can say unlimited, or you can give them a certain number. If you want to give them 3 attempts on the test. You can force completion. At KCTCS, we strongly encourage not to do this. It tends to cause students to get kicked out of their test or for their test to freeze up, so we've seen. You can set your timer. If you set your timer, you can set it your hours and minutes, and then you can decide whether you want the auto submit on or off. If you turn that on, then at that time limit, when that time limit is up, Blackboard will submit that test. Okay, so that's a way to kind of say pencils down and turn it in. You can choose when to show the test availability for students. So when are you going to allow them to come in and take this test? You can put a password on it. We use passwords around here for, some of them we use it for if they have proctored exams, or if they're a student who needed to make up an exam, they may then go in and put a password on it so those who don't have access to make it up or take it again, they can't get into it. You can put a due date on it now, straight from here. That makes it really nice. You no longer have to go to the Grade Center to add your due dates for grades or for the tests. And then if it happens to be a self-assessment, you can decide whether you want to include it in the Grade Center or not, or if you want to hide the results completely from the Grade Center and the instructor. So if it's just a practice test and you don't want to see it or know about it, you can hide it completely from the Grade Center. And then on the feedback, what do you want to show students when they get done? So you can show them score, submitted answers, correct answer, and feedback. Those are the options of what you can. So if they had 3 chances on this test, I wouldn't want to show them the correct answers, because then I would be giving it to them. So I'd show them everything else. And then when you're presenting the test, you want to present it all at once or one question at a time. And if you do one question at a time, do you want to prohibit backtracking where they can't go back? Like stat classes, question 5 might give you the answer to question 3. So you wouldn't want them to be able to go back to question 3 and re-answer it. I'm going to say all at once. And then you have the option to randomize those questions so that question 1 is not the same for all your students. It goes in it and it scrambles those questions up. So it helps anyways to prevent not being able to look at your neighbor while you're taking those tests. So once you have those options set, submit, and then that you've now deployed your test. Okay, so hopefully that helps for who was asking on actually deploying the test. And let's see, I'm right at my 1 hour mark. Misty, did I miss any questions that you wanted me to answer? Excellent. Thanks, Misty. Yeah, and as I saw Misty saying, you know, there's some new improvements coming to this area as well. So you guys keep your eye out for those in the coming months too. thanks everyone. If we've got all those questions, I will end my sharing and send it back over to Ashley.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Paige and Misty, for presenting today. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And have a great week, everyone. Thank you.